Hey folks, welcome back. I'm Rob Folkrod, and this is part 4 in our video series to get new instructors up to speed with Adobe Connect. In this video, we're going to take a look at the sharing pod one more time, specifically taking a look at how to share out your desktops. In a lot of classes, sharing out your desktop is really where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where you're showing students how to do the things that they came to see. So it's really important that it comes across looking as professional and as smooth as possible. First, before you share anything, you want to be ready. So how to prepare for a screen sharing session. Second, and this part is pretty easy, when you first start a sharing session, it's going to ask you what part of the screen do you want to share out to your students. So we'll take a look at what our options are right there. Third, how to make the most of a screen sharing session. And finally, one of the tools that I really find invaluable is a little freebie by the name of Zoom It, and we'll take a look at how that can really enhance what you're doing and make it easy for your students to follow what's going on your machine. So first things first. Like anything else when teaching an online class, a little preparation goes a long way. And so there's a few things you want to take a look at right off the bat. And so the first thing you want to look at is monitor resolution. You want to strike a balance between not having enough pixels to get done what you need to get done and having so many that it bogs down the connection and the screen is too big for the student to comfortably see. We need to find some sort of middle road. And generally, if you can kind of move yourself down toward the smaller side, you'll probably be a little better off. Somewhere 1024 by say 768, right, is kind of on the small side, and then somewhere kind of 1280 by 1024. Or say 1380 by 768. Those monitor resolutions there all tend to do reasonably well. And really you can do it, it'll work one way or another. But again, if you try to keep it a little bit on the smaller side, it's going to be easier for your students to see it. Alright, so the next one, which is fairly obvious, but I guess bears saying, is to just make sure that we do straighten up a little bit. We are bringing folks into our computer, much like you're bringing folks into your own classroom. So make sure that it is presentable. And make sure that you don't have a whole bunch of clutter sitting on top of the desktop. Make sure that the wallpaper that you're using isn't ridiculously distracting and is appropriate. And if you're doing anything with web browsing or whatever, make sure that you have a reasonably clear history so that we're just kind of focused in on the things that are in class. Some of the later operating systems, Windows 8, 8.1, 10, the Start menu has live tiles that will change what's on them, and many of the news tiles and such, you have no idea what's going to pop up. So not a bad idea in those cases to turn off live tiles or to get rid of them so as, not to be distracting. And then make sure that you have everything that you're going to need to teach class. Make sure that if you need certain applications, that you don't have to go digging for them in the Start menu, that they're just sitting on the taskbar or sitting on the desktop. If you're dealing with exercise files, make sure that those are in a folder that's on a desktop that's nearby. You don't have to go download anything. Any applications that you might be getting into, make sure you've already opened them once before you're doing it in front of a class, unless the very first opening is part of the demo that you need to do. Make sure that they've already been opened so that there isn't any surprises when you go to open those up. One of the things that I find really valuable is making sure that I have an account whose entire job in life is just to be my demo account. So I do a lot of teaching off of my own personal machine, and when I do, I log in as my individual user account as I'm doing day-to-day tasks. But when I'm about to teach, I log into a different account, and I know everything's going to be prepared. I know the wallpaper and the desktop is going to be cleared out, and I know that it's a really business-focused desktop. I find that helps out quite a bit. Okay, so let's get into it. All right, so the first question we've got is this question here about, you see, mini pod or no. And the graphic right here shows this dialog called the mini pod. And so what this does is when you go to share out your screen and you only have one monitor, right? You only have the one. You've got some sort of compromise now because you want the screen so that the users can see it, but you also need to be able to get back into Adobe Connect. You need to see what's in the chat messages. You need to see who's raised their hand. You need to be able to respond to that. And so this mini pod here is that kind of compromise. It is typically on by default. So when you go to share your desktop out, regular full-size Adobe Connect shrinks down into the notification area and leaves this Adobe Connect. And here you can turn the share on or off. You can turn your camera on or off. You could turn your microphone and speakers on or off. You could then get into the chat messages. You could see what's going on in the Who's Here pod. Right. All of those are available to you in this guy. Now, in general, I avoid this when I can. So I'm almost always teaching from a two-monitor, at least a two-monitor setup, so I can have Adobe Connect sitting on my kind of secondary monitor while the primary one is still displaying what we want the students to see. Okay. So that's the first question. If you look here, and we'll take a look at this again in a minute, but if we dig into the meeting menu and into preferences and into screen share, you will see that we have an option right here, should we enable that or not, right? So that's in there. And by default, when you come in on Monday, that's going to be checked typically, so you may want to go and turn that off. Right, so let's go ahead and share one of these out. I'm going to go to my pods. I'm going to go to share. Now what I generally have is a share that's set up specifically for desktop. I generally want to keep my PowerPoint up and not, because I could do this, right? I could go ahead and stop what I'm doing right now and share out the secondary screen, right? And there's nothing technically wrong with that, but then eventually I'm going to want to get my PowerPoint or slide deck back, and then I have to go back and share a document and find it somewhere inside of the chat, inside of the history, and then I can load that back up, and then it goes through the reload process, right, which is more trouble than it's worth. So generally I will have one set up that I can just go grab a desktop share. It's sized, it's ready to go. That's option number one. Option number two, and I haven't been using them here in my demonstrations very often, but option number two is you could have a secondary layout set up specifically for sharing out your desktop. So you just jump into that layout and it's ready to go. You share and then you jump back. I feel the same way personally, and this is, you're gonna have to kind of figure it out for yourself. But I feel kind of the same way, shifting between the two different layouts. I was actually, when I first started, I really kind of thought that was the way to go, and now it's just faster. It really is, just to go grab a pod, share, and then off we go. Then when you don't want it anymore, you hide it, you make it go away, and you're back. All right, so I've got my share. I go to share out my screen. And the first thing it's going to now ask me is, well, what do you want to share out? Do you want to share out a desktop? Do you want to share out applications? Or do you want to share out windows? And for me, I am almost always sharing out my desktop. And when I do, I'm going to click share here. Okay. And at this point, it then shrank Adobe Connect down because it was on the same monitor, right? So it's on the same monitor, so it shrank it down. Generally, I would have that on a secondary monitor, but now I've got my my monitor is up. My users can see my status bar, my taskbar. My users can see my start bar, and I can get into applications, kind of show them around like I would be showing a normal machine. This is my preferred way of showing this off. Now I'm going to get back into this and stop my sharing really quickly. You'll notice, let me share this one more time. I'm going to share my desktop out again, okay, and bring up Adobe Connect. You cannot see, if you're logged in just one time, you cannot see what's being shared out. So right now, my screen is being shared out, and my students would be able to see all of Adobe Connect, everything that's going on in there. Okay. Which is one of the reasons that it kind of minimizes. You could have private chat open or something like that, so it just gets itself out of the way. But you don't see what you're sharing. You just see the word stop. So that's full desktop. For me, the single most common. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch machines over here. We're going to take a look at what my users are going to see. And this time, I'm going to share my screen. And this time, I'm going to pick application. I'm going to pick one of the applications that I have up and running, and I'm going to click out Share. What you're going to see right now is the user's perspective. Okay. So what I've chosen right here is I've chosen just to show out a single application. And right now, you don't see much of a difference, but if you look down at the bottom, you'll notice you do not see the Start button. You don't see the taskbar. You're just seeing the application. My application right now is full screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of full screen mode so it's only showing up on part of the screen. Right. And I've got a second application that I'm now moving around in front of it. You'll notice as I move that second application around, you're just seeing that kind of blue checked in front. When you share out a single application, your students will only see that application, and they will not see any other window. Right? Maybe if the application is relatively small and focused and you're just going to be in there for a minute, you'll do just the share of one application. Maybe if there's some other things you don't want to ruin a surprise, I don't know, then you're just showing that one application. For me, it's a fairly rare occurrence. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this window, there's a little window here, and I'm going to peel that off, and now it's its own separate window. Because it came from the same application, not a big deal, right? So part of my application's over there, part of the application's over here, not a big deal. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share my screen one more time. But this time, I'm going to pick Windows. And when I pick Windows, I'm just going to pick that one window that you saw me tear off. Okay. And now that I do that, you're only able to see that window. So it came from a larger application. You cannot see that larger application, right? And if I try to bring anything in front of it like we saw before, it's going to be blocked. So here you're not even showing an entire app, just a small segment of that application. Again, for me, very rare that I would be doing something like that. Most of the time when I go to share, I'm going to go to the desktop tab and I'm going to pick which of the desktops that I want. Now you can see on my machine I've got 3 desktops out there. Of these 3 options, desktop, applications, and Windows, generally I'm going to pick desktop. And even more so, if you could at all make sure that you're sharing out the first monitor when at all possible, things tend to run a little bit smoother when you're sharing out the first monitor as opposed to your second or third monitor or whatever. So if you can set up your system in such a way that the monitor you want your students to see has been set up as the first monitor, things tend to work out a little bit smoother, especially with a tool that I'm about to show you in a minute or two. All right. All right, I'm going to cancel that out. And we'll get rid of that. All right, so we have seen in here kind of the mini pod option. We've seen which of these, and I thought it was important that you saw both what it looks like to share out your desktop and what it looks like to have a desktop shared with you. So the couple of things that you want to be aware of. Number one is get your cursor correct, and this is back on the Preferences tab. If you go into the meeting menu and from there to Preferences and then to Screen Share, and then from Screen Share, there's a checkbox right there to Show Application Cursor. You're almost always going to want to make sure that's checked, and it almost never is. So another one that early in the Monday morning, first day of class or whatever, go ahead and put a check mark in there. If you do not, then your cursor will always look like this guy right here. It'll have a little arrow on it, little computer trailing off the back of it. No matter what your cursor actually looks like. So if you're teaching an Excel class, we all know how important it is to show the users how you change from one cursor to the next, and each has its own meaning. That will be completely wasted on them if you do not put a check mark in Show Application Cursor. You will just see this, so make sure that you definitely do that. Okay. Number two, make sure that you move around really slowly. Not laboriously slowly, but make sure that you do give folks a little bit of an opportunity to watch. Many times, they're going to be doing several things at once. Right? Many times they're going to be taking notes, they're watching what you're doing, and they could just turn away for 2 seconds, and the entire screen could potentially change with a click or two. So make sure as you're sharing out your screen that you are taking enough time to point out the menus and the submenus, pointing out the dialogues, and just rest just a little bit. So for example, if I wanted to show out the meeting menu, I would go to that meeting menu and I'd put my cursor over there and I would say, here we're going to the meeting menu, and then inside the meeting menu, right now I've clicked ahead of time, I'm still talking, giving my students the opportunity to read what's there, then take them to the one that I want them to go into, and I'll say, okay, and then we're going to go into the audio setup wizard, right? And click on that audio setup wizard. So again, you're repeating it back to them just in case they miss it the first time. You're giving them a secondary opportunity. When you open up the audio setup wizard, and you can take them through the drill. Be a little bit repetitive, right? And take your time. It's not a race. Don't fly through there. You definitely want to make sure that you give students who are trying to do a few things at once, you give them the opportunity to keep up. All right, and the last thing that I want to look at in this video is a tool that I absolutely use all the time. It's a little tool called Zoom It. Is super helpful for presenting when you're in an online class like this, but quite honestly, I use it all the time. It is consistently in my startup menu. You'll see that once we get in there, there's a little dialogue, and in that dialogue down there, there's a little check that says Run Zoom It when Windows starts. On all of my demo teaching accounts, that's in there, so I have this tool. Now, technically, where you're going to find it is this odd address here, technetmicrosoft.com. You can read the whole thing there. However, just go to your search engine, search for Zoom It. There's the official address right there, but it's pretty prominent in search engines, and it shouldn't be that hard to find. It's a very small download. It's just a zip, and it's an executable inside of it. Right. So what does it look like? Well, if we jump down into my machine down here in the corner, you'll see that down in the little corner here, I have this little tool here called Zoom It. All right, so I've unzipped it, I've run it, that's it. And then it pops up down in the corner. And if I were to click on Zoom It right now, just click on the little option in the tray and bring up the options. There's the options that we saw before. And it gives us a number of features. The couple features that I am consistently using, and one is the ability to draw on the screen. I'm going to click OK to make that go away. The default keyboard keystroke is Control-2, and you'll notice that when I do Control-2 that my cursor turns into that little plus right there, and then I can just draw. Now typically what I'm doing, and let's go ahead and kind of back up here for a second and make a quick little switch. All right, so I'm back into my instructor account here. In my instructor account, I will go ahead and pop the desktop, and I will share my screen. All right, and so now I'm trying to teach, and something dawns on me that I wish I had a whiteboard. Control-2, and now I can diagram whatever I need to diagram on the screen. Now, it is transient, so if I were to do anything, if I hit escape, it goes away, right? It's not persistent. These are not objects that I can move around like I can on the whiteboard. So it's not quite as good, but it is super helpful. So if I were in some sort of application, and in that application, let's bring this guy back in. I were in the application, and here I just wanted to add a couple quick little notes. I can do that same thing, Control-2, and you can see you could try drawing freehand. I'm really bad at it. Escape, Control-2 again. However, you can tap the letter T. And then T allows you to enter into text mode. And so now I can add any diagrams in there. So I may go ahead and say, well, I want, we were doing this right here, and that pops in, right? So you can do a combination of both. Letter T drops you into text mode. I can type. Escape leaves the text and gets me back into drawing mode, right? Very handy. Once we're in drawing mode, there's a number of things that we can do. So for example, the Control key, the Shift key, the Tab key are all alteration keys for what we're drawing. So for example, if I hold down the Control key, right, I can get a rectangle. If I hold down the Shift key, right, nice and straight lines. If I hold down the Tab key while I'm drawing, right, then we can get an ellipse. And then if I hold down both Shift and Control, Shift and Control, then you can get an arrow from where you started. An arrow from where you started. So you want to start and then pull away. This was always a little bit, I always wanted it the other way around. I always wanted to be able to start and then move toward my destination, but it's not at all how it works. Okay. You say to yourself, Rob, how am I going to remember all of those? You went through that awfully quickly. They are all sitting here inside the options. So if I go onto the draw here, it will tell me all of those things. They're all listed in here. We can also start changing color as listed right here. That you've got red and green and blue and orange and yellow and pink. Okay. So Control-2. Now this is not F2 again, it's just Control-2. Control-2, and now we've got ourselves some orange. I tapped the letter R. Got some red, some yellow, in between there, some pink, some blue. Right, so you can shift colors. You could also decide, really what I want right now is I just want a full whiteboard. The letter W whites out the entire screen. Right, so now you just have a full whiteboard, draw whatever you need to draw, and escape will simply get you out. Right, so that's the draw mode. I spend a lot of time in that draw mode. But the name of the tool is Zoom It. Control-1. Control-1 does a zoom into the screen, right? And it really doesn't matter what resolution you pick. There are going to be things that are hard to see. And so the zoom is just one of those keyboard keystrokes that's just under my fingertips all the time. Escape gets you out. Wherever your mouse cursor is, that's where you're going to zoom. So I've got database diagrams right there. Control-1. I'm zooming in. Now, as long as you don't click anything else, the zoom is mobile. Right, so I can now move up and down, left and right. I haven't done any clicking. I'm just moving around. Right, so I can pick something else to be seen. Okay. Once you've found, right, I want that to be shown just like that, then I can click, and now I'm in draw mode. Right? So you can do a zoom and draw, which is very helpful. So the whole thing started with a control number 1. Right, control 1 got us into zoom mode. Once you found exactly what you want to be displaying, then I just did a click anywhere. That got me into draw mode. All the drawing is available to me. While you're there, if you make a mistake, Control Z, as you would probably expect, does undo. And Control C will, whatever is on the screen, Control C will copy that to the clipboard, so you can paste that into Paint or something else. Okay, and then Escape gets you out. Right. Those are the two that I use all the time. I am constantly doing a Control 2 and a Control 1. Now, there's one other feature. I don't use it as often, but let's imagine that I want to show something else on this kind of Find dialog up at the top. If I do a Control 1 and zoom in, that's great, except now it's static. I can't interact with anything. What I've done is basically made a picture, and I'm drawing on that picture, so I can no longer interact with that text box. There's also what is called live zoom. Live zoom, control the number 4. With live zoom, now I can click inside of the dialog right there, and I can continue to interact with it. I can find the word from, press enter, and it then found from for me. So it zoomed in the screen. It's a little bit more work. Okay. Also, the other downside is I instinctively will press escape to get out, and that doesn't do anything. It just sends escape. You actually have to repeat the keystroke, Control F4 again to get out. Control 4, not Control F4. Control 4 to get yourself out. Right? I don't use it, again, I don't use it as often, but it is handy when I need it. All right, so that's a good start with Zoom It anyway. Again, I gave you a whole bunch of keyboard keystrokes and hints on it. They're all inside of the Zoom It options. So you can, in the keyboard keystrokes that I gave you, Control 1, Control 2, Live Zoom, Control 4, those are all listed right there on the screen, and you can change them too. I have found on occasion, if I'm teaching back to Excel, teaching Excel, Control 2 is actually a keyboard keystroke in Excel, and I find it a little bit uncomfortable when Zoom It gets in the way there, so I might change that temporarily. But again, all of the keyboard keystrokes and all of the hints are all there inside of the documentation right there. So definitely check that out. And I think you'll find that once you start using Zoom It, you're probably going to be using it for quite some time. All right, folks, and that is it for our fourth video. We saw quite a bit in here. Take a little time before you do anything. Make sure that you're prepared. Make sure that your machine and your account are ready for you to invite a whole bunch of paying customers in. Right. Generally, when you have an option, right, when you have a dual monitor option, try to stay away from the, actually, you can do what you like. I try to stay away from the mini pod. I like having full screen of both. But if I'm at a customer on site, right, and I only have a single monitor, then I'll use that mini pod. And I will show my entire desktop. I think it's the least limiting for what folks generally want to do. Right. First thing in the morning, make sure that you go in and get the settings correct. So for that mini pod, do you want the little mini controller right there? And almost without question, do make sure you are showing your application cursor. If you don't, you end up with that one, which students probably won't complain, but they won't be happy either. Right? And then take a look at the Zoom It tool. practice a little bit with it. If you like it, great. Incorporate it into what you're doing. The real URL is listed there on the screen, but again, you can just Google it and look up Zoom it, and I think you'll all like it. Well, folks, I hope this was helpful to you. Again, my name was Rob Folkrod, and best of luck.